Hey guys, Darkantos here, and today we'll be covering the first part of scenario making, terrain painting. It is important to know that terrain is a crucial element in map making and storytelling. It sets the stage for your scenario, influences gameplay, and helps immerse players in the world you're creating. Whether you're designing epic battles, peaceful villages, or mythical landscapes, the terrain brings your story to life. So first thing you want to have in mind is, what are you trying to tell from your landscape? And yeah, that falls into 4 categories. First you got terrain, the terrain itself, the land, the cliffs, the water, and finally the trees. And of course we'll be covering each of these separately. And by the end of this we should have created somehow of land using these basics. Because this map really needs painting, just look at it. So starting off, there are 2 important things that need to be adjusted way before the painting tool. And that's the elevation of the map and its size. So starting off, you go to File, New Scenario, and in Type, you may generate a pre-made map already in the game. Then you may work your way from there. But we're not doing that. We're gonna go blank. Next thing you wanna do on the same menu, you may once again use pre-made settings on the map size, normal, large, or giant. But you may adjust the map size to your own liking by using the map size menu. This usually helps when you're making a scenario with a linear path of progression, and you're looking for more of a rectangular shape. Next thing on the menu would be map elevation. That is basically the height or the z-axis of the map. Simply enter the map elevation menu and you may modify it. However, leveling up the terrain too much will prevent you from adding any cliffs, since cliff height is already predefined in the game, and they do not generate from the elevation you defined. And the same thing applies for the water. If you decrease the elevation too much, you won't be able to put any water on the map, since it is predefined to have a negative height. In my personal opinion, the best way to go is to increase the elevation to a maximum, and then decrease it twice. Not only does this flatten the terrain, which makes map making easier, but at the same time, the height becomes moderate, so you can add water and cliffs at ease. Now moving on to land. Now before we get into painting, I always zoom out to at least have an overall visibility of what I'm working on. The reason for doing this is to keep an eye on the synergy of what I'm painting with the rest of the terrain. After all, this task is all about blending in the environment. On the same menu as elevation and size, just click on change, and then you get to pick which landscape you want to use for your theme. Now for the painting itself, you just go to the palette icon, free painting. Once you click it, a variety of terrains will appear before you. Now the game terrain comes into a variety of 5 themes: grass, sand, snow, jungle, Erebus. You might as well say 6 if you count the swamp as its own theme. The editor offers 3 types of dirt for each theme of land, whether it's sand, snow, or grass, and playing with these 3 levels of dirt is what defines the realism of a map. Of course, I'll be taking requests in the future for specific maps, such as cities, but for now let's just stick to the default. I'll make the outskirts of a city. Since these are outskirts, you'd be expecting people to be coming and going, so we'll kick things off with 50% grass dirt, because it won't be realistic to put 100% pure grass when there is a town and people are constantly going by. And since it will be most of the map, you can literally just go to the change tool and change it into 50 grass dirt directly, and then we'll be moving on to some modifications later. So here we'll be placing the city terrain, just to make our threshold of work. You want to use City Tile A or Atlantis, since it's the only 2 possible options. And on the brush settings, make sure to switch the brush to square instead of circle, since cities' buildings have a square or rectangular foundation. You may also zoom out once more, and put your brush on 25 or 30, so that way you may cover as much as possible and make things easier. The other shapes of brush, like rectangle or hollow square, may come useful at times of need, but we'll get to those in other videos. Next up, we'll emphasize the main road to the city with 75 dirt. However, do keep in mind that for this kind of grass terrain that you will only be put in specific places, you might want to use the circle brush and put it on a moderate, if not small, setting. Since you'll only be putting just bits of it here and there, you want to have control over it, that's why you need a smaller brush. And the circle shape gives a wild aspect to the painting, especially for something as random as yellow grass. And finally, as we're leaving the populated parts of the land, the grass should have more influence on the dirt, so we'll add 25 dirt over here, and lastly at the edges, the typical pure grass, since you would expect that rarely anyone would be coming to these parts. And as a last touch, you want to add some Greek road, which usually is a mixture of city and grass. You usually want to put these in the entrance of a city, or if it's just some village in the wilds. Also may I add that certain types of lands blend perfectly with others, and this is a perfect example. So the Greek road is a perfect blender with all types of grass and the city A. Also, the more you get away from the city, the more loosely you want to paint, to give a feeling of overgrown road that got covered by grass over the time. Notice that you can do the same thing for the levels of dirt. So this is what we're looking at so far. Moving on to cliffs. Using the canyon cliff icon, you may just left click to elevate, or right click to decrease the elevation. So on the cliffs menu, there is one type of cliff for each theme that we've seen before: Egyptian, Greece, jungle, Erebus or Hades, snow. Of course, swamp is not included, but you can make your own cliffs. We can see that later. Each one of these themes has either the rocky cliffs or the regular ones. The rocky ones are not accessible by units, and you cannot build on them. Most of the time they're to make somewhere inaccessible, or just for the sake of aesthetics. And the irregular ones can be used for any form of unit or building, just like a regular land, and any ground unit may walk on them. It's important to clarify that even cliffs are just pre-made tools of elevated land in the editor. It's made of non-buildable rocks around the diameter, and regular terrain in the middle. Hence why I said that one can create his own cliffs if the elevation tool is used accordingly. A few tools that might come in handy in this terrain editing. The raise/lower terrain icon. This is some form of controlled elevation that you may only apply to a certain area. Sample terrain, which is as its name mentions, allows you to pick up the land you right-click to instantly assign it to your brush. This is very helpful when you're quickly swapping between terrains and don't have the time to open the menu every time. Next up is the elevation sampling. Useful in similar cases to the previous one, especially on city making, when you have structures and walls that all need to be elevated on the same level. Smoothing is a wonderful tool when trying to make a road going upwards, like a staircase. Apply it between two different levels of elevation. It will pave the way. Usable a lot in cliffs to make the way up. And lastly, roughness. I personally hardly ever use this one. I mean, the only thing it does in my opinion is give the minimap a good look, but yeah. I'm trying to cut this video short as much as possible, but when I mentioned customizable cliffs earlier, I couldn't help but make one right now, so here's for instance how you can make a swamp cliff. I mean, first of all, let's just put ourselves in the theme, of course, and switch to marsh. The next thing, you wanna find the cliff that would suit the marsh theme specifically. So I tried the plain, but it's too brownish, so I went for jungle, since it adapts the same green as the marsh and swamps. And yeah, at the end, whatever you want to put up there is walkable land. Any type of marsh should do, but let's go with something more dirty. When it comes to the water, there isn't really much to cover, unlike the previous categories. There is a variety of types of water. You can customize the paintbrush to control your painting area, of course. However, there's one thing you gotta watch out for. Water erases anything on its path when made. And nothing sucks more than unintentionally deleting a character that you already assigned to multiple triggers. We'll get to how much of a bummer that is when we cover the trigger editor. Now there is also a water decoration tool. Based on what type of sea or river you're targeting, this may apply some ambience to the water, such as rocks, trees, or waves, mainly in oceans and seas. This brings us to the last category of land painting, trees. Just like all three previous tools, there are many types of forests, each belonging to a specific theme from the game's campaign. However, I must say that trees are way more versatile in their use. They can block paths, heal certain units, and even be used for some god powers to deal damage like forest fire or living trees. So do consider these possibilities before putting the player in the scenario at a power position, or the other way around. The forest tool is another pre-made system that puts many tree objects from the editor and paints below them with a specific land that can be found in the free painting tool, of course. Just like the cliffs, you may use them to make some zones unaccessible, or at least while you don't have a villager to chop wood, of course, which can also be served to hide secrets or relics on the map. Otherwise, if you want to have more control and have the trees more spread out around the map, you may just use the place object tool. Go straight for the T, for trees, and pick which ones you want and place them around. Note that doing this, you may also pick trees on fire from the forest fire god power for unique fiery visuals, which looks really awesome. And with that, we come to an end to the first part of this tutorial. I know that this first video covers mostly the intuitive stuff, but I hope nonetheless that you got to learn a tip or two that would make your terrain painting easier. If you have any questions, please do ask them below in the comment section. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell for more content. Thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you on the next one, where we'll be creating the city.